Hey there, it's Johnny here, and welcome to another episode of the 3C Show. And as always, I am super pumped to be here. It's so awesome for you to stop by. And today on the show, we're talking about how to find the sweet spot in your lenses, all right? And what I mean by that is the best aperture that's going to give you the sharpest details in your photographs, okay? And we'll talk about how apertures affect that a bit later on. But I got this test that I've done, okay? You want to find an object. I found something with writing on it, something with, light writing and dark background, or vice versa. I wouldn't say black, because you want to be able to see those edges to work out that, what is the sharpest thing. And I actually did this test on my 70-200 f4, so this little lens here, I think it was at 100, at 200 mil actually. I'm just looking at Lightroom, so I forgot. At 200 mil, and I just ran through the different apertures, and I'll take you through and I'll show you exactly what's going on in a minute. But basically, you want to set up your object so it can't move, so the light isn't changing on it, preferably, okay? Set your camera up on a tripod and then focus in on that box. And what I did, I actually put it on spot focus, so I could move the spot onto the location I wanted to focus every time, and then it was just a matter of adjusting my aperture. I did put the 2-second timer on, so that meant my hands were free when it took a shot, just in case. But look, there was plenty of light in my test. It probably wasn't necessary, but the key is not to move your camera. That's the key. Have it in the same spot, have it focusing on the same point, and having your object not moving it, preferably not the light changing on that object as well. All right, let's jump over to the Lightrooms and I'll show you this amazing photograph. You're going to be so blown away. And yes, it's a picture of a camera box, a camera lens box. So not that exciting, but that's okay. All right, so we're in compare mode here in Lightroom. That's with this XY mode. You can see this button down here. And what we're looking at on the left is a shot at f22, and basically what I did, I just focused in on this writing down here, okay, the 200 to 600, roughly around that area. That's where I focused. And the one on the right is f20, okay? And what we're going to do is, if we just arrow through our images now, comparing the f22, and as we go right, you can already see the difference. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but look at the edges of the F and the E. Look how much crisper they are already at F14. And we're going down to, and nothing, you can see, nothing's changing. The ISO isn't changing. The shutter speed is changing because it's in aperture priority, okay? So your camera's choosing that shutter speed, but I'm choosing the aperture, okay? And as we go down, look at that. So there's F11, there's F10, F9, F8. Look at the difference there between F8 and F22. Oh, that's crazy, right? And then we can just keep going all the way down. 7.1, 6.3, 5.6, F5, F4. And I would say, we're getting down to F4. That's open. That's wide open on this lens, and it's just loading in there. I would say that's not as sharp as where we were back here. So even F4.5, F5, F5.6 is getting reasonable, but I think, honestly, when I'm looking at this, around that sort of, 6.3 to F8 to F11, maybe around there, F8 looks pretty nice. And look at the difference between that F8 and that F22. My God, it's like night and day, all right? And you probably heard me say it if you've watched any of my things before, or you've probably heard, when you're shooting with your lens, you want to try and get the aperture around that sweet spot, okay? And so the sweet spot for this lens is around that F8. All right, and every lens can be different. And something to really keep in mind, if you've got a lens like, for instance, this long lens that I brought, is actually, it's a 5.6 to 6.3. So meaning, it's 200 to 600. So between 200 and say 300, it's at 5.6, and between 300 and 600, it goes up to 6.3. Okay. So if you've got a variable aperture lens like that, make sure that you're checking both focal lengths. Okay. I probably with this lens, I'd probably do 3 tests. I'd do one at 200, one at 300, and maybe one at 600, and then just compare them. So I know at those different focal lengths, basically because the aperture's changing aperture's changing by the zoom in the lens. I know where the sweet spot at those points are, okay, just so I know, all right? And usually if you've got like any high-end lenses, like a 24-70 2.8, or, you know, I showed you that 70-200 f4 or 2.8, you know, it's higher end zoom lenses, you won't have this issue. There won't be any problem with zooming back and forth. You'll probably find that the sweet spot for the aperture will be the same for those sort of high-end lenses, okay? So you might be wondering, why is this happening? Why, when I close the aperture down and make it really small, like f16, f22, you know, even smaller, that you're getting the sharpness drops off in your lens, okay? And you may have heard of a thing called diffraction, all right? And what diffraction is, it's basically, you know, the bigger the hole of your aperture, the more light it's letting in, we know that. But what's happening is, if you look at this graphic here, the light doesn't have to bend as much to get to the camera sensor, okay? There is a lot more technical, you can go into it, just Google lens diffraction, it's all over the web. But basically what you're doing by making your aperture smaller, and you can see here on the right hand with the smaller aperture, so the black lines would represent the aperture. You can see on the left we've got quite a wide aperture. So the light, those waves are representing the light coming into the sensor. They aren't being bent as much when they hit the sensor, okay? And then when you close down your aperture, you can see on the right hand diagram there, the light waves are being bent, okay, before they hit the sensor, okay? And that's what's causing that micro shift in pixels that gives you that downgrade in quality, okay, in your sharpness, all right? So yeah, like I said, if you want to find out more about it, just Google camera lenses, diffraction, and there's, you know, heaps of information there on the web that goes into a little bit more detail about it if you want to find out. But that's basically the gist of it, okay? That's basically exactly what's happening. So what I recommend you do, take all your lenses out, shoot a heap of images all through the different apertures, put them in Lightroom, do the comparison between the two, and work out where your sweet spot is for every one of your lenses, okay? And once you know that sweet spot, that's the aperture you're trying to hit, okay? When you start with your camera settings. Of course, there'll be times where you won't use that aperture, all right? So say you're out in the field and, you know, you've got your wide angle lens on and you didn't bring any ND filters and you want to get a longer shutter speed, sure, you might drop down to f14 or possibly f16, but you just need to know that you're going to lose that detail by doing that, okay? So photography is all about give and take. And the same, you know, when I'm shooting in low light with this new telephoto lens, I shouldn't be pushing it, probably I would say, to 5.6 because it's probably not at its sharpest, all right? But often I will, because that allows me to not have so much ISO and limit the noise to keep my shutter speed up to make the shot. So it's all about give and take. There's many reasons why you might want to not use the sweet spot aperture, but I recommend when you're trying to work out your camera settings and you're in the field, start with that sweet spot, and you know everything is going to be tack sharp. Then if you nail your focus with your focus settings, you know all the details in that frame are going to be super sharp. All right there, get out and test your lenses and leave me some comments below. What did you find? What did you find your sweet spot aperture? I did this with my 70, what did I do? With my wide angle lens actually. So it's my 16-35, and I found that, you know, f8, f11, f8's good, you know, it probably gives a little bit more detail than f11, but I wasn't getting that depth of field. So if I wanted to get everything sharp, again, you know, not using that exact sweet spot where I think it was sharpest was f8, but going to that f11 because I need that extra depth of field to get everything in my frame in focus, okay? So that's why I said it's all about give and take. So get out there, figure out what your sweet spot is, and leave some comments below. Leave what lens you've got, what you found was your sweet spot, and if you've got any questions, let me know. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Just a little quick one there to fire through. It's a must-know for each one of your lenses. And remember, if you're looking for a photography coach, if you need help with your photography, there'll be a link below. And this has been Johnny for 3 Colors, and we'll talk again really, really soon. All right, love you guys. Peace.